Welcome back. Former NPA head advocate Menzi Simelane has been answering questions about his decision to refuse to sign off prosecutions, including that of Bosasa-related corruption. It comes after the disbandment of the Directorate of Special Operations, also known as the Scorpions. Simelane is the last candidate to be interviewed for the position of National Director of Public Prosecutions to replace Advocate Shamila Batoy, whose term comes to an end in late January.
When you say that you wouldn't sign on the basis of what was being said, wouldn't the responsibility be to sign on the basis of the docket and the merit of the case? Would you have looked at the case itself rather than what everybody's saying, the JCPS? Because, I mean, if you come to us even today, if anyone asks me about a case, I'll have a view. But I don't know the content of the docket. Yeah. Now, the NDPP would have to make a base decision on the basis of information inside the file. Yes. Now, I get worried the way you are classifying your reasons for this.
No, that's correct. No, that's correctly that. Because when I then asked questions, well, it was the manner in which it was being done as well, in the sense that, you know, there's no formal meetings being set to say, look, let's meet and discuss and look at all these types of things. It's talk as we attend to other things. You need to sign off on this, you sign off on this. So I simply said, I'll gladly sign. One problem. These matters are not ready for prosecution. You guys are still investigating. Yes, we are still investigating. So I said, well, on that basis, I can't sign anything that is not going to start a prosecution. These are matters that are still under investigation. You're not finished. I don't know how far you are from being finished. So I don't have authority over investigations because the NPA no longer has investigative capacity. So please take these to Mr. Dramat. Well, I didn't have them with me. They didn't give them to me. They just mentioned them by name. I said, please take all of those files, take them to Mr. Dramat with all the trunk. I can't remember what those things are. That's where the stuff, documents, things where I said, no, take them all to Dramat. They'll attend to them as a DPCI.
Simelane says there's nothing irregular about his meeting with an accused person pending an investigation. He allegedly met with the late advocate George Bizos, who was representing former Nelson Mandela Children's Fund trustee Jeremy Ratcliffe, who was charged with the possession of uncut diamonds in 1997.
An accused is requesting to come and see you while the case is being dealt with by your DPP. Isn't that not an undermining of your DPP, which you intentionally, when you arrived, felt that you needed to give them powers? Was it not counterproductive for what you were doing and what you saw as a vision of your tenure?
Not at all. This was purely going to be a meeting to say, okay, we are going to meet. What do you want to discuss? What are the issues? What I then asked for from the DPP was the prosecutor who was dealing with the matter to say, because there's somebody who's dealing with the matter, can somebody be here so that also I'm not alone? So I want somebody to be here with me so that we have this particular meeting, which did happen. So there was a prosecutor there who came, and Mr. Bizos said, you know, are you going to proceed with the prosecution because we are going to be making representations about it? So I said, no, it's fine, you can make representations. What is the issue of concern? Then what he indicated was, well, you know, for us, we would argue that this matter should not be prosecuted. Then a debate, why should it not be prosecuted? He made arguments to suggest that it's de minimis.
All right, for more on the NDPP interviews, we are joined by Palesa Mashabane, who's an ethics subject matter expert at the Ethics Institute, providing services concerning organizational ethics to public, SOE and private institutions in South Africa. Palesa, very good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Maybe let's just start off with the role of an NDPP, just giving an overview of the importance of ethics in that position.
Thank you so much, Katleho, and greetings to the viewers of your channel. That's a very good question, especially while we're in this process of interviews for this critical position. It is a critical position because an NDPP is a chief custodian of prosecutorial integrity in our country. This is the person that is expected to uphold the highest standards of our Constitution and have the highest regard of the people that he or she will be serving. And therefore, ethics being concerned about really the equilibrium of what is good for that person in terms of their own personal values, institutional values, professional values, but also the societal values that are embedded in the constitution of our country. And therefore, this is the person who says, I don't just live for myself. I have been entrusted with this strategic position of safeguarding the interest of the people and making sure that the institution will rise up to that occasion. So ethics become very important at the core of what this person or this role is expected to actually execute.
And to what extent do they impact the administration of justice in South Africa?
It is very important because this is the role that influences the decision-making when it comes to prosecutions in South Africa. And therefore, it is important that when we look into this role, we then advocate for consistency. The person who will demonstrate consistency, doesn't matter what case is in front of them, who is actually being investigated. It talks to the fairness, it talks to the impartiality that the person must uphold, but also very importantly, it talks to the independence that a person must have so that they can be able to execute that strategic role in a manner that is fair, that is just as well for all the parties that are involved. And I think what is important for me is that those values should be demonstrated despite who is really being prosecuted at that time. So those are the values and that are core, very integral to the role of the NDPP as far as the administration of justice in South Africa.
So over the last 2 days, we saw a number of those candidates who are vying for this position, and the very last candidate was Advocate Menzi Simelane, and a lot had to be with regards to his previous occupying of this very position. How would you evaluate how he responded to some of those questions, especially when it comes to his previous work and the potential conflicts of interest in the future?
You know, when we talk about ethical leadership, at the core of it is really taking accountability and being responsible for the actions that we have taken, that we have found ourselves in. Now, King talks about core values or traits that needs to be cultivated. And as I've alluded, it talks to integrity, it talks to competence, it also talks to accountability, and also it talks to fairness. So the fact that he has this track record, of course, it will call for scrutiny, much more scrutiny, especially because he's been in the office before and he's coming out years later and he's saying to us as a nation, look at me, I am transformed and actually do deserve to be given another chance. However, an ethical leader has to demonstrate that transformation has taken place by the way they have upheld certain positive values or values of integrity, of that transparency and accountability. So in a nutshell, it helps when we can actually bring about an explanation that can gain trust again, because now this is an issue whereby trust has been violated and there's little trust in the community, in the society. I mean, you have already seen the oppositions against him, just being an applicant. However, King talks about fairness. So we need to have evidence. We need to also give everybody an equal chance as far as their constitutional right is concerned. However, that person must understand that they will go under scrutiny because trust has been tainted as far as their ethical character integrity concerned.
You make mention of the King 4 report, and one of its principles is that of transparency. And with transparency moving just beyond being compliant, but really underlining why you took certain decisions. And of course, that transparency would then translate into the trust that the public would have in terms of the decisions that you've taken. The Auditor General actually asked Advocate Simelane with regards to what he thinks are the biggest contributors towards the diminishing trust of the public towards the NPA. And he said it's that lack of transparency from the NPA to the general public.
Absolutely. And trust is one asset in our country that unfortunately is diminishing. And I often say that trust is now used very casually to a point that it has really lost its essence. However, at the core of it, at the core of integrity, at the core of that transparency, it is trust. And therefore, organizations and institutions need to make sure that there are structural mechanisms and tools in place to ensure that we've got controls, sufficient controls, we've got oversight bodies that are effective and efficient, that can ensure that even a role such as an NDPP one can be subjected to that. But parliamentary oversight bodies as well, that this person must be able to account. Often say that simple. Transparency is me being able to say, what I have executed, I can be able to give an account of, without hiding anything or without any fear and without any favor. So therefore, when we are transparent in how we even communicate about these prosecutions and so on and so forth and sanctions, then we are able to rebuild the trust that has really been eroded in our community.
You touched on a very interesting point earlier with regards to, especially when someone is looking to get a certain position and there are previous transgressions. Where do we find the balance with regards to what has been done previously, the trust that has been eroded, and affording a person the fair chance in wanting to maybe take up a certain position in the near future?
I believe that everybody has a right to opportunities and to embrace those opportunities. However, there is also this balance about the public trust. And as public servants, we ought to realize that, you know, the trust that we have been given by the society, we're actually stewards of. And we need to really safeguard it and ensure that the integrity and the ethical standards are maintained. Now, if a person wants to apply for an opportunity, really, they have a right, but they have to also appreciate that there is more scrutiny that is going to be conducted on them. There's going to be more risk assessment that is conducted on them because of their track record. Unfortunately, there is, you know, we call it ethical lapse, a time such that things do catch up with us, especially if ever they were not resolved. And the society as a key stakeholder is not satisfied based on what has been communicated, and also even the sanctions being completed, that this matter has really been attended to fully. Then people will raise the issue when you want to take on the opportunity. And I think it's just prudent and being responsible of a person who is applying for such a critical position, especially under this Madlanga Commission, when now we are trying to say what has gone wrong and how can we redress and restore the trust that we want to see in this very important institution. So it's a balance, Katlego. You want to apply because technically you do qualify, but we are going to look beyond just your qualifications. We're going to have to do your integrity test. We need to ensure that we can ask you questions that can make the society say, okay, maybe this person has transformed, but with some evidence. At the same time, it's a balance of constitutional right for an individual, but also the public trust and the stewardship that we need to ensure that it's not clouded.
And quite the balancing act it's going to be, especially for someone to hold such a position and ensuring that they champion the ethics and the integrity of the NPA. Palesa, thank you so much for your time and for your insights this evening. That was Palesa Mashabane from the Ethics Institute.